In this week's video, I'm going to give you 5 steps to take absolutely epic photos during moody conditions. Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. So I have just returned from 2 weeks in beautiful Tuscany in Italy. And when you go to Tuscany, you do kind of expect atmospheric calm mornings with fog in the valley, warm days with blue skies and a few puffy clouds, and warm soft sunsets. And wow, did we get that? Plentiful, like perfect mornings, to say the least. However, this year we also more than ever ran into some super moody weather. Texture-rich clouds, shelf clouds, thunder and lightning, rain, and days with heavy clouds and occasional breaks for the sun to peek through. When you go out to do landscape photography and expect the former, but end up in the latter, it is important to be able to benefit from the weather conditions that you get. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. The real benefit of mastering moody landscape photography is that it completely widens your shooting opportunities. No longer are you solely reliant on those fleeting moments of golden light at sunrise and sunset. You can head out and capture images in a much broader range of weather conditions. Think about it. How many times have you stayed home because the sky wasn't perfect? Mastering moody landscapes means you can find incredible photographic potential even when the clouds roll in or the rain starts to fall. But most importantly, it unlocks a new realm of creative expression. Moody conditions lend themselves beautifully to more melancholic, atmospheric, and even minimalist compositions. The drama of heavy clouds, the soft diffused light on rainy days, the sun breaking through the clouds, and how showers and low clouds and mountainous vistas can create depth, separation, and dimension. These elements can help you convey a completely different set of emotions and tell more introspective stories with your images. It's about moving beyond the traditionally beautiful and exploring the more melancholic and dramatic raw power of less conventional good landscape photography weather. One might even say, seeking out the sublime. Before we get going, I just need to define what I mean by moody weather. And it is basically rainy days, days with heavy clouds, changing conditions, stormy conditions with clouds, and so on. Although I do like my atmospheric mornings, and you can argue that they are moody too, I'll not be talking about those in this video. And make sure to stay around to the end, where I'm going to share a bonus editing technique that you probably want to apply to almost all your photos. So without further ado, let's get into step 1. Step 1 is either to get an overview of the weather you're in or predicting and positioning yourself optimally. If I am home in Denmark, I follow the local weather forecast. If showers, downpours, or maybe more dramatic weather is predicted, I pay attention. If I'm traveling for landscape photography, I keep checking precipitation and cloud forecasts. My go-to weather app for international weather is windy.com, and when you're live on location, the radar function is invaluable. This one shows you where and how much rain is coming. If I'm home in Denmark, I use the radar from the Danish Meteorological Institute. Obviously, you're probably going to benefit the most from your local meteorological institute. So once you find the optimal weather, think about positioning. Where will the storm pass? Where will the clouds go? Can you place yourself optimally relative to the direction of the rain? This is where the live radar function on apps is invaluable, as it shows fairly precisely where the front will hit. A front moving in can be absolutely epic. Crucially, lightning is dangerous. You need to prioritize safety. Most radar functions do show if a shower or a downpour has a lot of lightning in it. And if there is a severe weather warning, respect it. No photo is worth your life. Use the radar to understand storm movement and stay outside the active lightning cloud, not inside it. Predict the weather type you want, understand its path, and safely position yourself. Heavy downpours can come with some epic and dramatic clouds and deliver some incredible photos, but be smart about it. Another thing I look for in the weather apps are days with showers. On windy.com you can go into the cloud function and areas that show almost no clouds or a light cloud cover, but do show precipitation, that's the blue dotted areas, are areas where showers are predicted. These areas are fantastic for landscape photographers because the sun occasionally can break through the clouds and locally light up parts of the landscape. It is also during these weather conditions where you can get that dappled light, sunbeams and rainbows. Composition is a universal technique, so no matter if you are composing a portrait, a wedding scene, a landscape photograph, a wildlife photograph, there are just some general techniques that you want to apply. However, for landscapes and specifically moody scenes, there are some of the compositional tools I want to highlight more than others. Firstly, you need a subject. If you have a stone front coming at you and it has enough details and character, it can actually work as your subject, but in many cases it may end up as your secondary subject. However, I generally prefer to also have something on the ground to work as a focal point that can anchor the attention and from where you can explore the rest of the photo. On one of the days in Tuscany, we had a big rain front approaching us, and I managed to use these two cypress trees as the foreground subject. You can also see I like my central compositions. Aligning your foreground subject with whatever you see in the sky balances your photo and in my opinion makes it more dramatic. Also, place your camera so you avoid distractions. This can be visual information creeping in from the side of your photo, like background bushes, trees, roads, strongly colored traffic signs or houses. You can hopefully see in these examples that your attention stays within the frame at either the foreground subject or the dramatic skies. Besides avoiding distractions, I also think in minimalism and negative space. If your sky is interesting enough, emphasize that and let it take up a big part of your photo, so that the sky is a character in your scene. And actually the same is the case if your sky is of less interest. Here you can use a lot of negative space, still bring in a lot of the sky to emphasize whatever is on the ground. By doing so, you can really emphasize a feeling of isolation and melancholy. However, you can also choose, if the sky is of less interest, to put more emphasis on your foreground. Let it take up more of the scene. But in doing so, it is important to make sure that your foreground is actually interesting to look at. In these examples, I put more emphasis on the foreground and midground because that's where the story of the photo is. The moody sky isn't per se an actor in the scene, it simply delivers the mood and soft light. So subject, balance, and avoid distractions along the edges, and be aware what part of the scene that you want to put emphasis on. Besides these themes, I cover much more about composition and landscape photography in my 2 easy-to-read ebooks on that subject. With minimal text and tons of examples, they're super easy to read. Each ebook covers a whole range of different compositional tools, as I like to call them, and in the final chapter I put it all together so you can see how I use them in my photos. There are links to both ebooks down in the description of the video, and you can subscribe to my newsletter to get access to the free light versions. Alright, so now you've found your subject, you have positioned yourself, and you have composed the photo. So now it's either about just shooting, if the light is optimal, or waiting for the light to happen. Moody conditions are dynamic. Look at the sky, see how the light and the clouds move through your scene, and take the photo when it's optimal. But the question is, when is it optimal? Generally, look for breaks where shafts of light pierce through. Dappled light is incredibly dramatic, like natural dodging. The light literally tells the viewer where to look in the scene, so when on location, wait for the light to move onto the place in your scene that you want to be lit. In these examples, we stood around for 15-20 minutes, just observing and waiting for the light to both illuminate parts of the rolling hills to bring out the depth and separation, and at the same time light the town of Pienza in the background. We actually had so many days with dappled light during the 2 workshops in Tuscany and came away with so many great photos. Conditions like these also make it possible to photograph throughout the day, even during summer and even in countries where the sun is close to zenith. If you don't have that direct light that dappled light delivers, it is beneficial to wait for the clouds to move into a position where your subject, which is often darker than the sky, will stand out even more. So if there are brighter areas in the background clouds, line them up with your subject. And on overcast days with rain, sleet or snow, the precipitation can also create depth and dynamics in your photos. You can benefit very well from this in mountainous and hilly areas. These photos from the Faroe Islands are some of my all-time favorites. This one was taken on a regular dull rainy day where I actually made a video all about taking photos in the rain. You can check that one afterwards. And these two were taken minutes apart where a shower of sleet passed through the scene, creating depth and atmosphere, and overall helped emphasize a both dramatic and melancholic cold feeling. But what if the clouds are just flat and boring? Well, you can always try to leave them out if the scene subject and composition allows for it. This is easier in mountainous landscapes, and a telephoto lens works best for this, as a wide angle in most circumstances will end up including the sky. Alternatively, if you photograph with a wider focal length for a vista photo, try compose to minimize the sky and put emphasis on the foreground, as in this example from Slovenia. There is usually always a shot to be taken. No, it may not be world class, but that's not really the point of it. The point is that you can usually optimize it by being aware of the elements in your scene and how the light behaves. And I do cover much more about light in my newly released ebook, Landscape Light, which of course covers the subject, light in landscape photography, and color for that matter. Just like my two ebooks on composition, you can get it via the links down in the description of the video. And another special thing about this ebook is that it has extended EXIF data so that you can see whether I blended the photo, focus stacked the photo, focal length blended the photo, auto exposure bracketed, or used a filter to take it. And with the two other ebooks, you can get the free light version by signing up to my newsletter. So step 4 is all about getting the optimal settings in your camera. There are no perfect settings, it's just how it is, but you can optimize given the different conditions that you have. In moody conditions, you'll often be dealing with either low and flat light due to the overcast conditions, or high contrast where parts of the landscape or sky is significantly brighter than the surroundings. For low light, a tripod is often a great help for sharp images. Generally, in landscape photography, we may as well go for a low ISO to minimize noise, as we don't always have fast-moving elements in our scenes. If you don't like using a tripod, you may need to up your ISO a bit to be able to achieve a fast enough shutter speed to get sharp photos. In such cases, be sure to benefit from the image stabilization in either your camera or lens. Your aperture will depend on the desired depth of field. If you want everything sharp, go for a higher aperture like f8 or f11. If you go for a wide-angle photo with an immediate foreground, you definitely want to close down your aperture to get both your foreground and background in focus. If you are very close to your foreground, you may even need to focus stack, which was the case in this example from the famous chapel Vitaletta. For detail-rich, dramatic clouds, you'll need a relatively fast shutter speed, and if you want to convey a sense of movement or decrease the impact and detail of the clouds, you can experiment with longer exposures by using a tripod and neutral density filters. And speaking of filters, you can also use ND filters to create this ethereal, calm, moody feeling with a long exposure in scenes with water. Remember to check your histogram to avoid clipping highlights or shadows. This is especially important in high contrast scenes. As a rule of thumb, you want to expose to the right to get an optimal signal to noise ratio, but make absolutely certain you do not clip the highlights. Check out my video on how to always get a perfect exposure if you're unsure about how to do that. And step 5 is all about editing. This is where your moody photos really come to life, because raw files are generally more flat than what you see with your eyes. So some kind of post-processing, whether it's just adding a bit of contrast, is always a necessity. Well, at least if you want to go all the way and make a proper photo. But of course, in the end, post-processing is subjective and you can do whatever you want with your photos. For moody photos, it is for me all about bringing out the details and enhancing the contrast of the different parts of your photo, deepening the shadows and bringing out the texture in the foreground and the clouds, but at the same time being careful of not overdoing it. It's about finding the balance, which does require some practice and some back and forth deliberation with yourself and maybe some constructive feedback from some photography friends. In post-processing, it is about being deliberate. If I want to show the clouds, then I make sure to emphasize what was special about them, and if I want to show the details in the foreground, I put emphasis there. In this example, it is all about how the dappled light illuminated the hills and the town, so I made sure to add contrast and to emphasize this aspect of the landscape. I also darkened the sky to make sure that the town stand out on the background. However, and this is important, I actually reduced the contrast of the sky to lessen the impact of the moody clouds. Our eyes are drawn to the high contrast areas of the photo, so if the sky was more contrasty and the brighter parts of the sky was brighter and the darker were darker, they would draw attention away from the illuminated town. With masking options in both Photoshop, Camera Raw and Lightroom, selecting the sky is easier than ever, so you can easily work on the sky and ground individually. Just be careful of those edges and avoid making halos. It is also in post-processing you can remove distractions that pull attention. Especially Photoshop has become so good at this. Still way better than Lightroom and Camera Raw. I swear to this. This is a hill I'm going to die on. Photoshop is the titan when it comes to this. The newer Remove tool is invaluable and works fantastic in conjunction with the Clone Stamp tool and the Healing Brush tool. And with Photoshop 2025 you can now easily remove wires and cables. Just choose the Remove tool, go to the top and select Find Distractions, and then Wires and Cables. And in this example you can then use the Remove tool to remove the pylons and clean up potential artifacts. You may need to run over it a few times. If you struggle with editing and want to learn much more about it, be sure to enroll in my big Photoshop for Landscape Photographers post-processing course. It is in this course I share all my editing tricks, tips and techniques along with my philosophies on how to properly edit your photos, giving you the skills to develop your own style. I show how to do it all and you can choose how much you want to apply. I cover everything from introducing you to the programs, which I think is super important as especially Photoshop can feel overwhelming to begin with, oversharing my techniques such as working with layers, luminosity masks, dodging and burning, cleaning your photos properly, working with atmosphere, mood and glow, focus tagging, to giving you 11 start to finish tutorials covering a wide range of different types of landscapes and weather conditions you can encounter being a landscape photographer. 20 plus hours of information packed into 30 plus videos, so there is a ton of value to dig into. There is a coupon code along with a link to the course and the ebooks down in the description of the video. And as promised, here comes the bonus tip that I apply to almost all my photos. In Camera Raw and Lightroom, you can scroll down to the Objects tab and choose Manual and pull the midpoint all the way to the left and slowly introduce a bit of negative or dark vignette. This helps darken the edge of the frame and thereby also clouds in the sky and pull attention towards the middle of the photo and your subject. But be careful, you do not want to overdo this as it can easily look contrived. 5 steps to master moody landscape photos. Remember to subscribe and get my ebooks and course if you want to learn even more. And check out the video right here where I go out into the field and get some beautiful melancholic and moody long exposure landscape photos.